Hello and welcome, everyone. We are here on the webinar today to talk about this really important topic when it comes to engaging individuals. And this title is called People Like Us Do Things Like Us, How Identity Shapes Your Volunteer Fundraisers Behavior. And joining me on the call is Otis Fulton. Otis, next slide. Otis is a social psychologist. He is currently completing his doctorate dissertation in identity, community, and fundraising. Really cool stuff, although Otis will tell you he thinks it's a little dry and boring, but it's so incredibly important to the work that we're doing these days. And so we're just very excited to be able to share a little bit of what Otis has learned as he's working on his doctorate dissertation and how that can be applied to the work that we all do every day. My name is DJ Hampton. I'm a lead consultant with Turnkey. And with that, I know enough to get out of the way so that we can jump right in. Otis, before we dive in, anything you'd add?
My mother-in-law had a perfect critique of my work. It's not interesting, but it is informative. However, I will try to go beyond that in the webinar here today. I will try to be interesting as well, although she is not on, unfortunately. So thanks for being here, everybody. When COVID hit, at Turnkey's clients that had established robust online communities fared much better than those who had no online communities. And, COVID just accelerated the shift away from live events. But it was something that really has been happening for a long time. Katrina, my wife, and I wrote a blog in 2018 titled, Is the Walk Dead? It was the most highly read blog that we had ever put out. And, 75% acquisition year after year, that isn't a success. And yet that's what we were getting year after year after year for many years. And we've known for a long time that supporters, they don't transition with us from year to year with events. DJ, I know you've got a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, and pardon my phrasing for what I'm about to say, but Otis mentioned that our retention rates are abysmal, 75%. I would say that it sucks. And that really matters. When we look at how we can pull levers to raise more funds, there's only really three ways you can do it. You can recruit new donors, you can retain more donors, and so that in future years they keep giving, and you can grow average gift size. And as the fundraisers on the call know, it is retention that has an outsized effect on the top line data. And with events, we've grown really comfortable with a model where the basic fundamentals do not actually support the revenue growth we're looking at. As a result, we twist ourselves into knots of, is it a revenue event or is it an engagement event? And the answer is yes, it's both. But something has to shift on the revenue side when it comes to retention. Otherwise, we're just leaving so much money on the table, it's not even funny.
Yeah, and we at Turnkey, we've been advocating shifting away from looking at supporters or fundraisers as participants in our events to members of the community for years now. When you look at them this way, you move away from seeing them as an average fundraiser with an X dollar value for this event. And instead, you look at them as community members who have a greater lifetime value. So, what is a community? A community is just some group of people where you have a group with regards to some defining characteristic. It's very, very vague. It could be as broad as Richmonders, where I live here. It could be a group who are like-minded about anything. We started talking about tribes, and this webinar came out of a discussion that DJ and I had in front of a group at Nonprofit Power up in Philadelphia about a month ago. We were at a breakfast and had a few notes and just had this conversation, and it went over very well. And the thing that really resonated in that presentation was this idea of tribes. Tribes is cooler than community. It's more specific. To me, tribe suggests passion, emotion. And I've been intrigued with this idea, this concept of tribe, since I read Seth Godin. You may know him. He's a marketing guru. His 2018 book, Tribes, We Need You to Lead Us. When we announced this title of this webinar, someone said, hey, is that misappropriating, the Indian tribes? And, tribes isn't just about American Indians, although that's what we're most familiar with probably. It's a broader term that comes out of anthropology. And a group needs only two things to be a tribe. And this is from Seth Godin's book: a shared interest and a way to communicate. And it's the second part, communication, that's really, really important and often overlooked. Communication can be one of four kinds. It can be from the organization to the tribe. It can be from a tribe member to the organization. It can be from a tribe member to another tribe member. That's kind of what I call sideways communication, or it could be a tribe member to outsiders. And it's when tribe members communicate with one another that things really get interesting and start to happen.
And Otis, if I could add one point there, if the reason that this framing matters is that we started using the word community because it means something to each person who hears it. It could be geographic, it could be temporal, it could be the group you get together with online, it could be the friends and your neighbors down the street, it could be your church, it could be your university alumni community. As a result, because it's so nebulous and it actually doesn't really have a meaning, it's worked really well when it comes to marketing. Like, you're part of a community, you can insert whatever view you want on that. However, it does hold us back. It doesn't get to what Otis is talking about, which is that intersection of the donor passion and your mission. And so I will challenge everyone, spoiler alert, there's two things I'm going to tell you that if you got a pen and paper handy, you need to write down. I would write down every word you see on this slide right now. It's probably the most important takeaway that you could take from here, because all the rest of the things you're going to hear from Otis flows right from this.
Not interesting, but informative, in other words. Yes. So, in his book, Seth Godin says that a tribe without a way to communicate is just a crowd. And we've been trying to gather crowds for these events in the nonprofit world for years. The thing is, crowds don't sustain, tribes do. So an organization, a nonprofit organization, can increase the effectiveness of the tribe and its members in three ways. First is by transforming the shared interests that the tribe members have into some passionate goal and a desire for change. And it's this change element, that's when a tribe comes together to form a movement. The second way is by providing these tools to allow members to tighten their communications. And, we have a myriad of tools now to do that. And the final way is by leveraging the tribe to allow it to grow and gain new members. And, most organizations focus only on the third tactic of growing new members, thinking that a bigger tribe somehow equals a better tribe. But, that's not often the case. For example, the National Rifle Association has a huge impact on the political structure of the United States, far more than the organization's actual size. It's not a big organization. And that's because the tribe is extraordinarily well connected. They communicate up, down, sideways, and because they, have a passionate mission, not just some common idea. Now, I study identity, as DJ mentioned, because we know that people's identity influences their behaviors. Specifically, the dry part, I study the relationship between identities, moral identity, actually, recognition, and fundraising. And people have many aspects to their identities. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a fundraising professional, I'm an animal rights advocate. At any given time, parts of our identity are more salient, as psychologists say, than other parts. I'm also a white guy who played basketball in the ACC in the 1970s, not so salient. If I raised funds for the University of Virginia Athletic Association, though, like some of my former teammates, that might be a more important part of my identity, more salient. So your identity is in large part determined by the tribes that you identify with. And psychologists talk about the motivation people have for connectedness, our need to belong. One of our most powerful survival mechanisms is to be part of a tribe, to contribute to it, and to take from the tribe some group of like-minded people in some way. And we want to belong not just to one tribe, it turns out, but to many tribes. And that's that idea, we have many identities. So DJ mentioned, get a pen and paper. This is a big key idea. Your identity, the way that you see yourself, makes you more likely to interact with your tribe. Every time you interact with your tribe, then your identity becomes strengthened, making you even more likely to interact. So it's kind of this virtuous cycle that goes round and around between your identity, engagement. DJ?
Yeah, so write that down, call it the virtuous circle, the tribal circle, whatever you want to nickname it. But we've already asked you to write down individuals united by a common interest and a way to communicate. This is the thing that flows out from this. This is how you actually take that concept and make it real. And so in a few slides from now, we're going to be talking a little bit about some examples that have happened, but more importantly, how you can operationalize this and build this into your ongoing planning.
Yeah, and this is why providing your tribe with a way to communicate is so vitally important. It gives them more opportunities to interact, to engage, and thus strengthen their identity as a warrior for whatever your cause is. Now, a while back, a Facebook friend of mine, a woman, posted something to a group that she's a member of, and I happened to get on it somehow. It's a Facebook group called Teeks Anonymous. I don't know if you know Teeks. Maybe I'm not saying right. Tieks. It's a kind of shoe. It's a brand of women's shoe. And I was interested in what's Teeks. And this Facebook group has 42,000 members. So I went on the Teeks Anonymous Facebook page yesterday, and I saw this post. Okay. There's a picture of a shoe on a woman's foot. Okay. And the post is my $3 Goodwill find. #jackpot. Side note, I've never owned a pair until now, and I am in love. Okay, now in 2 days, this post got 1,700 likes or little hearts, and 200 people posted comments. So the Teeks company has a tribe that, seemingly desperately wants to communicate, and they gave them the tools to do so. They just set up a Facebook page, very, very simple. They made the tribe what we call tighter. And by tighter, I mean that the shared interest is a more important part of their identities because they can communicate with other Teeks wearers or Teeks enthusiasts, whatever they think of themselves as. Now, closer to the nonprofit world, last spring, the American Cancer Society set up a Facebook group for each of their 90+ events. The average number of engagements, posts, or responses to post for everybody in those Facebook groups was 22. Now, that's a lot of interactions. That's a lot of engagement. People want to connect with members of their tribe. So here's the problem with just getting people to show up for an event. A single event doesn't produce a warrior against breast cancer if you're the Breast Cancer Society. There's not enough engagement from a single event. Just showing up for an event just isn't sufficient to impact your identity to the extent that we want. We had a really interesting example of this. A few months ago, we invited a group of people over for dinner when we had a kind of a COVID pause. And there were 8 people there, and I didn't know 2 of them were vegans. And I had made pork tenderloins, my delicious pork tenderloins. And so they had to eat my side as their main dish, which was my pea salad. I'm going to post the pea salad recipe in the chat because it is a killer pea salad. If I do say so myself, I'm a bit of a cook. Now, when we got to talking about these people and their veganism, it was really startling to hear all the various aspects of their lives that this part of their identity touched. They don't wear leather. They grow their own food. They volunteered in animal shelter. They foster animals. They share recipes on Facebook groups and so forth. Veganism is their lifestyle. They have lots of opportunities to engage and make this part of their identity more salient.
Yeah, and if I could add one thing there, we talked about those 3 levers earlier. You can acquire new donors, you can retain a higher percentage of them, and you can grow average gift size. Inexperienced fundraisers, CFOs, and CEOs assume new donors means we've built a community. Look at how many people we had show up on a Saturday. We've built a community. And the truth is, it's the furthest from that. Experienced professionals and successful tribe builders do not fall into that trap of equating new donors equals community. They understand their goal is to build these tribes and get people united around a common cause and get together with people who do things like me, since that's actually what helps all 3 levers grow your top line revenue.
So just showing up isn't sufficient.
Yep.
So, what's the fix? The fix is to start thinking of people in terms of their lifetime value as part of your tribe, not just participants in your events. And I had another great example right before Christmas. I mentioned I'm kind of an animal rights advocate, animal welfare person. I donate monthly to the Richmond SPCA, which is a non-kill shelter. And I got this message from about 2 months ago. They needed to raise $22,000 for a new X-ray machine. Their old one was X years old, and it just broke, and it was kind of a crisis. So the tribe members were encouraged to donate, to reach out to each other and to friends in the community. And make a long story short, they raised the money in less than 48 hours. They announced this cocktail, and they said, you can't spell cocktail without TAIL. And of course, they had the dogs and everything around the machine. It was quite lovely on the site to show off this new machine. So that was the tribe waiting to respond.
And if you have a chance, go to breastcancer.org. Last month, Otis and I were able to sit down and learn a little bit from Lauren Hughes, who helps run some of their survivor groups as well as their engagement strategies there. And if you have not seen this, check this site out. It is about survivor groups coming together to give themselves shared support. Go to the website and you'll see there's over 225,000 members, 33 forums, 163 topics. They set up a place where the community to come together, have a tribe get built of people with like-minded experiences, and they share, and they have an incredible amount of comments and engaging conversations. It is probably one of the most engaged communities I've seen, but it's authentic. And they created the space to let them engage with each other and then promote and help them do that. And it's had great impact on their ability to engage with a population that is right in their mission and right in their strategies. So check out breastcancer.org.
It really is something, DJ and I both kind of stumbled on at the same time. It's a great example of this sideways communication between members of the tribe. It's just really, really fantastic. So I came across this while I was researching, doing some research for this webinar. It's a little test of the strength of a community or a tribe. It's by this gentleman, Fabian Formuler. I'm sure that's not how you pronounce his name. At the Together Institute. I never heard of the Together Institute. They have some very interesting resources there on community though. And this is it. It says, if a person who's a member of the same community as me, but the two of us have never met, contacts me and asks for my help, how likely am I to help him or her? And I thought that was so interesting. Do a little mind experiment. How well do you think your organization would come out in this test? And it occurred to me, what is this test about? This test is really about trust. The stronger the tribe, the stronger will be their shared identity. And so the stronger will be the trust among the members. And trust is what makes your tribe tighter. And, this trust is actionable. And by that, I mean that more trust results in more action among the tribe members. And that's why the Richmond SPCA could raise $22,000 in a day, because people trusted each other when these anonymous folks reached out to them.
If you get a chance, think about the tribes that you've been engaged with. When Otis told me about this, it started to remind me a little bit of when I was in school. I was going nights and weekends. There was a day program. There was an evening program. The day program was incredibly competitive. They were ranked, so they competed with each other. People were taking notes out of the library so no one else could get access to the source material. Whereas the evening class, where we were all working full-time, had families, kids, the whole 9 yards, we had a very different culture, and it became almost this tribal feeling. You missed a class, you'd email it out, everyone would help you. You wanted support, someone would set up a study group for you. You needed help with a specific topic you were struggling with, you'd email it out to anyone in the class. You'd probably get 10 or 15 responses. And because people were helping you, we felt like we needed to help others. So when you got a response, you were more likely to engage and help someone out. It became this really self-powering process where we all just got more and more engaged in each other's success. And as a result, we all helped lift each other up. And it's the same feeling that you might have if you attend church services, you go to a nonprofit that you're really good at engaging people. You get that same feeling of, we are all in this together and we're accomplishing this big thing together. And I will do anything to help you and you will do anything to help me.
Well, and I can't let you go on that point, DJ, without mentioning your motorcycle group. I had no idea about that. Do you want to share a little bit about your motorcycle tribe?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So another tribe that I've been involved with over the years is Vespa enthusiasts. You might not know this. I like to ride Vespas really far distances. And I was involved in a scooter gang of friends who would just get together and ride on Sundays. Well, we started going to these regional gatherings, scooter rallies. A couple hundred people would get together in a city and started making these networks. Well, when you ride far distances on an Italian-made scooter, they're not exactly the highest reliability, and you will break down. And so as we were driving through the Southeast, your Vespa would break down, and I'd reach out, text somebody, call somebody, post in Modern Vespa, hey, I've broken down in Chattanooga. Anyone know anybody? And you'd get a quick set of responses like, oh, I know so-and-so, or I know the owner of this garage, they can help you, or you need a place to stay, come crash with me. And so it became a way that, this tribe gets created of people who just love Vespas. And likewise, I've had several people as they've passed through the towns stay on my couch over the years. And so it becomes this way of, again, tribe building around this common interest. But we go to the ends of the earth to help each other, because we know someday I might be in that situation and I want to help them out too.
I have to say, I don't think scooter and gang belong in the same sentence. I think it must be a scooter club. I'm sorry, scooter just doesn't work. Scooter gangs. Okay, so, what does this even look like in real life? We talked about tribes and so forth. DJ gave you a great example. A good example is Thon. If you never heard of Thon, Thon is the most successful student-run charity in the world. It's at Penn State University. Thon supports the Hershey Cancer Center. It's raised $250 million since 1973. Last year during COVID, Thon raised a cool $11 million. COVID didn't really get them to skip a beat. So this is from their website. Our year-long efforts culminate in a 46-hour dance marathon. Now, notice that they say Thon culminates in a dance marathon. Yeah, if you're on the Penn State University campus, you'll see a lot more Thon logos worn by students than Penn State logos, believe it or not. In fact, for many students, Thon is a lifestyle. So how do they achieve that? Well, this is a sample of some of the 243, what they call wraparound events on the Thon calendar. About half are actual events themselves. I interviewed Suzanne Graney, the executive director of Thon. Actually, Thon is the student organization. Four Diamonds is the kind of the administrative organizations that works between Hershey Cancer Center and Thon. Suzanne told me that the wraparound events are specifically designed to, quote, build identity. So it's to build the student's sense of identity through these engagements and so forth. Now, some of these are, again, fundraisers. Some of them are just get-together. Some are service, all volunteer-led, huge amount of engagement, huge amount of identity building. So each of these events, they're projects in and of itself. So you've got the 5K, the 100 days till Thon, this a countdown. You've got a family carnival and so forth. Some are fundraisers, some simply exist to build community and to give them the opportunity to interact with others. And they pull in other students, which kind of develops this synergy amongst the tribe. And the solicitation on Thon's website is telling. And it's not an invitation to donate. It's an appeal to, quote, join Thon Nation, to be a part of this tribe. That's all they do to solicit people. After you get in, then you're involved in them attaining the goals and so forth. So, you might say, let's do that. The title of this webinar is People Like Us Do Things Like This. It's another Seth Godin quote. If you ask people, well, if you can ask people who support your organization why they do it, and they say people like us do things like this, supporting your organization is part of their identity. If that's their response, it is part of their identity. They're probably someone who's on board for the long haul with you, because they're going to come to see themselves as a warrior against cancer or whatever your cause is. So, of course, they're going to donate or raise money. They're going to volunteer. They're going to bring friends to the organization, whatever. It's part of their identity. And listen, we know that this sounds great. Everybody would like to do this. Why isn't everybody doing this? What makes it hard? This requires collaboration between the various development departments, planned giving, what's now called events, P2P, all of them. This requires 100% support from leadership, or else the silos that we have today just start to calcify. It also requires playing the long game, seeing people not as kind of short-term participants in our events, but as members of your tribe who have a high lifetime value. And that requires, people are poor at that. People are poor at dealing with the future. We prefer to focus on the short term. It's just one of our cognitive biases. And it's tough because, for all of its flaws, we have perfected putting on events. It's like we built the best possible bicycle for one of DJ's cross-country trips instead of a motorcycle.
And, if I was in your shoes, I'd be saying the other reason that it's hard is that if you think about your event lifetime value equation, just to refresh everyone, it's your number of your events times the number of people who show up, both returning and new, times the percent who activate to fundraise, and then times the average dollars they raise. That's your equation that can summarize all the dollars you raise either in an event or an event series. Again, all the moving pieces. All of our KPIs, all of our processes are usually aimed at some discrete units within there, and they're not looking at it from a total picture. And what then happens is the next level down, the coordination between the departments don't happen. It's hard to go to a CFO without them understanding the importance of tribe building to say, hey, I need you to help us invest in the marketing team. And the marketing team is going to do the support piece for all of the participants to become engaged. And oh, by the way, it's not going to directly drive dollars, but it will drive dollars because people will be more engaged, they'll be more involved. It becomes suddenly hard to think across that many channels. And so not only is our KPIs built not to support tribe building, but our own internal structure just gets in the way. And then it makes it really difficult to argue for resources without a really forward-thinking CEO or visionary leader who can help clear out those roadblocks. Otherwise, everyone just goes back to the way it was because that culture becomes reinforcing.
DJ, I'm going to let you finish us out here today.
So the answer is, can we? And the answer has got to be, we have to. When we first looked at events, they gave rise in the 70s of people coming together to do something big. And it had this element of tribe building. And over the years, we've really professionalized it. And so I'd say, yes, we can return to the roots. And here's how. So next, first, we need you to seek support where it makes sense for communication building. If you have to, storm the castle walls, go up the food chain, grab your CEO by the lapel and shake her or him. Let them know that everyone in the organization, from the CEO to the finance team to marketing and communication, must not only understand the importance of tribe building, but must know that this is an organizational imperative and that we will not have large success in other areas without building tribes outside of events. The next one is critical. We have to look at our peer-to-peer platforms differently. And instead of it being about the nuts and bolts of helping people simply reach out to a bunch of people over email or shout at their friends that they need to support them, we have to really focus on how our platforms can support community building opportunities. Again, we're really great at shouting at people in texts and emails. We've got to stop shouting at people and let them engage with us and with each other in an authentic way, like breastcancer.org and the other groups that you've heard about today.
And yeah, and sometimes it's kind of scary to let them talk to each other, isn't it, DJ? I kind of think they push back from that sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what if somebody says something inappropriate? Well, the tribe will self-police. They'll help push each other. But at the same time, you've got to give people the freedom. It reminds you a little bit of that whole Bodie McBoderstein thing that happened where the internet was able to vote on it and it got quashed. And you had this incredible community building opportunity, yet no one wanted to do that because people weren't seeing the opportunities there. So you've got to be comfortable in that loss of control around that. The next point I think is critical also, which is letting people express their identity. And that is, again, letting go of that control. But your goal is to let caring human beings who have a passion for you and your mission come together. That essentially has to become our job. The logistics and the email and all the other things that we do have to be in service to that goal, not in service of putting an event on a Saturday. The event on the Saturday becomes part of the engagement chain and part of that circle, not the only reason for the circle in the engagement chain.
Yeah, and that's where volunteerism is so important too, DJ. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the volunteers become critical. This becomes your pipeline for future board members, for future other individuals. You really want those future leaders who are going to help others raise money or help you make future decisions. You want them to have an incredible experience and have it be an authentic one that's based on their community. You're more likely to have them involved 5 years from now if it's part of their identity than if they view it as, I'm just helping somebody out on a Saturday. And this is why the tribe idea is so important. And then this last point, we have to ask ourselves, how do we measure our success? And it's pretty straightforward. Look at the 3 ways you grow revenue, and then look at how you are increasing retention, decreasing churn, and increasing the number of inter-community engagements. Otis has mentioned in the past that some groups will get 20 or 30 responses to a post. You mentioned that earlier today when it came to the shoe things. We have to start looking at those keys of community building as also metrics to our success, not just the dollars and the attrition and the $0 people. It has to also be these other pieces that lead to deeper connections and deeper tribal community connections. Otis, what did I miss there?
Nothing. I think we're good. So what happens if we do it?
Yeah. So if we do this, retention is going to go up. I mentioned that a moment ago. You're going to spend more time engaging and less time acquiring. And that also means you have more time to make your tribe happy, increasing engagement, which deepens the relationship, which leads to more engagement. Next. We also, they'd be happier. They're going to like you more. They're going to feel more positive. And psychologically, Otis could tell you all day that when somebody feels a psychologically powerful affinity to you, that's more likely to trigger them to take additional actions outside of just giving you dollars down the road. Also, your tribe's lifetime value is going to skyrocket. Groups that have really thought through how you build meaningful, personable connections rather than just transactional are cleaning up as we're moving out of this pandemic. We saw the same phenomena happen 10 years ago as we moved out of the 2008 crash. We're seeing a similar play out today, that those who are focused on tribe building are seeing lifetime value go up. Those who aren't are really struggling with what this new normal means as we move out of the pandemic.
Yeah, to DJ's point, the second one, your tribe would be happier, you'd be happier. There's a book that we came across a few years ago by someone at the University of Pennsylvania and one of the other Ivy League institutions. It's called The Blue Line Imperative. And quite honestly, I don't recommend this book, unlike the Seth Godin books, because it's just so crammed with formulas and market analyses and so forth. It's very difficult to get to. And then the last chapter is, what does it all come down to? It comes down to happiness. If people are happy, they continue to do what you've engaged them to do, to buy, to solicit, responses, whatever it is. It really is about happiness. And it sounds trite, but I think that fundraisers should get up and say, what can I do to make my tribe happy this week?
Okay, and we are now at the point where we're going to be asking you all, if you have questions and thoughts, please start typing those in. I see a few have now started to come in, and we'll be hitting those here in the next couple minutes. But in the meantime, please start putting your thoughts, questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to get through those. And just doing a quick time check. We've got time to answer those. And so the first question that pops up is, how does, I think that Beth Whitehouse wrote, how do they manage that? I think you're referring to breastcancer.org. Do they have a dedicated staff partner? The answer is yes. From my understanding, and it would be wonderful for us to connect again with breastcancer.org on this, but they started it from a pure mission imperative. We have people who have to have an outlet to support one another within the community. And it became a mission focus for them. Over time, that has grown. They've realized it's the most efficient way they engage with their community. And they're being very deliberate and thoughtful of where they present opportunities to volunteer, to give, to advocate to that community. But at the core, it is about providing additional engagement to a group that cares about them. Not, I'm creating a group to try to help us raise more money. It's, well, this group wants to help, so we're going to help them raise more money. It's a slightly different twist on it, but it all started out of that authentic place with mission, where they've invested staff time and resources to building that community, the resources, and having those services there, so people want to participate. Otis, anything you'd add for the breast cancer history that you know from your perspective?
No, that about covers it. Let me see if I can pull my chat up again. Sorry about that, DJ. I had a little technical problem there.
No worries.
Stop sharing the screen. Oops.
So, Otis, if it's okay, we can move on to the next one.
Yes, go ahead.
If that works. There was a comment that was put on here. It looks like Kate, who said she's a CrossFit enthusiast, added, my tribes are the super police when it comes to enforcing the culture and values that we share. I think she was talking back about the let go of control and let them talk to each other. If anyone crosses the line, it gets shut down immediately. And that's the experience I've had, that people will say, this is not what we stand for. This is what we stand for. And those norms are become very powerful and self-reinforcing.
Yeah, by the way, the CrossFit tribe is one of the strongest tribes you will ever see in your see out there. And anywhere, it is very flat organization in that there's all kinds of crosstalk. It's pretty much leaderless, and it's really a remarkable community.
Okay. We had a question come in from an anonymous attendee. What would better performance metrics for peer-to-peer staff be? Like specifically? So you've got to have your baseline metrics that, dollars raised. You have to keep tracking that. But the piece that we have to shift to is shared accountability across teams for tribe and community building. We had mentioned the number of reactions to a post as a key one. The ability of our staff to, when they're in dialogue with individuals, make those linkages happen so that a person isn't just saying, well, did you activate your fundraising page? It's, did you reach out and help the community? Or, hey, this individual over here mentioned that they need some help. Would you be willing to talk with them? Some groups that do that really well. Hydrocephalus Association has a strong community mission interaction by Facebook groups. And my understanding is their staff's kind of evaluated on how that all works. So we need to really think through those other pieces that add value to that tribe building and try to remove the other things that don't matter. Like, did they file their permit on time? Yeah, they should. They shouldn't be in that role if they didn't. But we also have to layer in those things that we know lead to deeper tribes down the road. Otis, anything you'd add for metrics or KPIs?
I'm not the metric or KPI person, as you know. So,
next question that came up: does this kind of idea have to start with the CEO? What are the chances someone at the event level will be able to execute it? Does executing it mean we doing all of the tribe building stuff? Can I do some of it and have improved results if it isn't all in my control?
So DJ, I think I can boil this down to where would I start? What would your best advice be?
Yeah, no matter where you are in the organization, letting people understand that dollars flow from people who are engaged and passionate. That the best way to increase engagement and passion is to engage people in a tribe building model. If regardless of where you are, that starts with educating other individuals and letting them know how it is. The other is to use your influence on your peers to help them get them to support that. And then working with your team to have joint measurements of accountability and success so that marketing isn't solely focused on open rates and click through, that it's more about the community engagement metrics that you share so that you are forced to work across teams. You can't do this type of work alone because it requires the organization to buy in. But once the whole organization does buy in, the payoffs are pretty amazing. If you've gone to an event where you felt it was authentic and they engaged you in a way that was meaningful, that feels a lot different than somebody who's just really pushing you to activate your fundraising page and get out there on a Saturday. Like, it's very different feelings between the two. And so figure out what you can control and then work from there.
Yeah. And you're not going to come up with a 231 item calendar like Thon has right away. You need to do it very, very incrementally. And, I think the biggest shift for me, and the light bulb kind of went off for me, is, hey, events are just goals that the tribe achieves. Events are not the be all end all. They might be a culminating event, but they're just one more event in the life of the tribe. They're just one more goal. And I think that's why it's so important to reflect change to the tribe, because a tribe becomes activated when they can bring about some change, even if it's a small change. And like the Richmond SPCA example, that tribe became activated within 24 hours. So it's really important to reflect change, because that's when tribes become movements, and then they move on to another goal. So these events just become goals. They're not the culminating event, so to speak.
Thank you, Otis. We have another question: that why would leadership say no to this?
DJ, I will let you take the first swing at that.
Well, the reason leadership says no to this is often one of two causes. First is, show me the ROI is usually the first reason. You'll get it's not a negative CFO, but you'll get a CFO who doesn't understand the purpose of how tribe building can help raise more funds, increase engagement, drive more volunteers, drive more advocacy. And they just say simply, show me within this narrow window how this helps us out. Whereas if you're able to step back, it's very difficult to step back and get them to understand that you're liable to drive more major gifts outside of the tribe as you do this, outside of the event. You're liable to lift up retention rates. You're able to do these. It becomes very difficult to make that internal case when the metrics of why we should invest in this staff resources is show me the ROI here in the short-term window. And so sometimes leadership says no to this because they don't see it as the long-term piece. They're looking at it through a very specific lens, and this lens may not line up with short-term ROIs. That's one reason. The second is they don't understand it. And if they don't understand it, it's hard to say, I'm going to realign different components of the organization to this, and that this should be a higher priority than establishing the new MIG module within the CRM or standing up a different function. And so you've got to be ravenous in making the case internally and do everything you can to get them to understand that at the end of the day, this is what will drive future results, not the color of the t-shirt or the other pieces that people sometimes think are critical. And that goes with the next point. My marketing department freaks out when my volunteers mess with our logo. I'm hearing that we let go of that. We're not saying to let go of standards. We're saying that, we're not talking about letting people go hog wild with your logo. What we are talking about is letting them talk to each other and engage each other in an authentic way so that they're working directionally together. And if occasionally someone does something that's quote unquote not within your brand guidelines, that's okay. It's easy to redirect. It's less about control and it's more about letting people talk to each other and creating that environment where they can engage. Otis, what would you add to that from the psychological part of that, internally or from the donor's perspective?
I think that, to your earlier point, I think that why wouldn't leadership sign off on this? Because as we said earlier, it's people are more focused on the short term. Just as you said, most of my professional career was in the education industry, and I sat down with the ACT's CEO one time. ACT is a nonprofit organization, the big test company and so forth. And he said, we don't work in a 2-year plan or a 5-year plan. We work in a 10-year plan and a 20-year plan. He said, I'm thinking 15 years out right now. And that's very unusual, but you'll see that the most successful organizations typically have that kind of a unique kind of a perspective. And but again, we're driven by short-term goals and so forth, short-term gains, and it's very difficult to step back and to look at it from that perspective.
Thank you, Otis. We have a comment from Marcy. First, she says, hi, Otis and DJ. Hey, Marcy, how are you? Second thing that she said is taking a page from our planned giving colleagues. They're often measured by the number of personal donor touch points rather than dollars, since there's no control on when or if the dollars will come in. Marcy, it's a great point. It's, that leads to deeper engagement and has an indicator that you're going to have somebody who's more connected to you down the road because they're willing to meet with you and have conversations. That could be a key piece that you look to for those. Otis, any thoughts you have on that?
No, I completely agree. Yeah, that's exactly how I would handle it.
Okay, we've got Dave in Calgary. Hello, Dave in Calgary. Love the title. Does tribe building work more easily if the cause has a common enemy like a disease, a politician, etc.? Otis, do you want to talk anything about that from the psychological perspective first?
I'm sorry. You cut out there for a minute, DJ.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's on my end. Yeah, go ahead.
It says, does tribe building work more easily if the cause has a common enemy like a disease, a politician, etc.?
Oh, well, that's certainly a way to. Okay, now this gets into the very dry part of the research. Yes, you can certainly marshal people against something. But the research all tells us that in the long run, it's not as satisfying as being for something. And, being for change is one of the most positive and reinforcing things that people experience. It makes them tend to come back long term. Yes, engaging somebody against something it's kind of a short term kind of a strategy. It works, but it just doesn't sustain.
Otis, Dave's question reminds me a little bit of the old adage that hope is not only a beautiful thing, but it's actually what tribes are built out of, is that idea of hope for a different outcome tomorrow that we're all working towards. Is there any psychological benefit of saying, regardless of what your cause is, focusing on hope for fulfilling your mission is key, or is there something else that you think's driving that?
Well, it's interesting. Tribes are not always built on change. CrossFit is a good example. The Teaks example. These are people that have a common interest, but it's only when the tribe becomes interested in actually change, that it becomes a movement. Then there's a goal. So yes, and I think that there should be a whole sequence of goals in a tribe's lifetime, and you can plan that out. That's part of playing the long game. Does that make sense?
I think it does. Bridget Strickland, hello, Bridget, wrote, what do you recommend doing first to start year-round engagement / movement building when we have a successful community of people who have an identity, but they are completely focused on one central event a year? In other words, how do we get them to be more excited about everything, not just the event?
Yeah, one thing that I thought was remarkable was we were talking to Cystic Fibrosis Foundation last year, and they actually had the first event, if you will, that was suggested by people who had cystic fibrosis. And I said, that's the first time this has ever happened? Oh, yes, it's never happened. And the group came to them, and they were very thoughtful in what they wanted to do. And then the organization supported them. You might solicit, Seth Godin talks about micro leaders in his book Tribes. I was up at 4 a.m. reading it in preparation for this webinar, rereading it. And, I think developing micro leaders for these smaller events, smaller goals, is something that is a good way to get things going. And it's a good way to then sustain it by having more micro leaders pop up.
And Bridget, your question reminds me a little bit of the work that Spina Bifida Association has done. And I saw Sarah Strew was on here a little while ago. I think she had to drop off, but they have a pretty successful event series across the country that is not focused on the event once a year. It's focused on the community coming together, often from disparate geographic parts within a state, coming together to celebrate each other. And so they have engagements year round where they're talking with each other, they're working with their staff, they've got online groups that are really active. The event is a day in the year, but it's a culmination of a year's worth of support for one another. And in all honesty, I think if they tried to cut those events, there would be some very angry people who'd either find another way to get the community to come together, that tribe to come together, or would find a different way forward. And so I think it's tying it back to the mission, but also finding what value the community has that's bigger than just the event itself, and constantly tying it back to that tribe of support. Anonymous attendee wrote, what would you recommend corporate partners be included in? Would you recommend corporate partners be included in this tribe? Any examples you could share?
As in corporate partners, as sponsors, is that what we're talking about, DJ? Or
I believe so. I don't know if it's that, or if it's also inviting them to have their staff members and others be part of the tribe outside of the event.
Yeah, I think with corporate partners, it's got to be a volunteerism kind of a thing. A lot of times, you'll have a corporate partner that marshals its workforce to support XYZ, and it's not really a choice. I think having volunteerism is really the crucial part in anybody that you're really engaged with in the organization. They've really got to want to be there. I'm part of a tribe of people that has to deal with the IRS each year. I don't want to do that. It's not my choice. But we're all in this huge tribe where we have to deal with the IRS because we don't have to fill out our taxes. That's kind of an extreme example. But one of the things that is important about belief and commitment is that people feel that they have a free choice, and they're doing this of their own free will. And so I think that from any kind of a corporate sponsor, getting people that want to be there, that are volunteers, not just because they're part of the corporation, that's part of their job, is very, very important.
And where I have seen corporate partners be leveraged in these is when it comes to building out the capacity to do this work. So for example, if you need the capacity to support a community and really create this tribe online by providing resources that can help educate people on your mission, it's very easy to go to a corporate partner who may want to fund that creation of that missing piece that your staff and your tribe might need to be more educated. To me, they could help fill in gaps, but unless you're recommending the corporate partners, staff become volunteers and engage, like Otis pointed out, I think it's really difficult to say, this community brought to you by blankety blank blank company. So that would be my thought on that. We also have anonymous attendee writing, I imagine focusing on tribe building has a tremendous impact on net promoter score and therefore has an indirect effect on new recruitment from telling a friend. Just thinking about the business case internally. You are spot on that. It's people like me who think like me and act like me. They're more likely to go tell their friends. And what we see is this ripple effect that people say, oh, well, you're interested in that. Let me tell you this really neat thing I did. And that happens passively over dinner, but you suddenly end up with people who are involved. I was working with a donor who had a friend who called him up out of the blue and said, hey, I just heard about this other thing. I'm not really attached to it, but my friend told me about it. And I am now full bore in. I attend their gatherings. I go on this piece. I give them money now. You should join us because they're people who think just like us. And it was really interesting hearing that donor say this over education, where they could have never been engaged with this group before, but because of their friend, it was in their network, brought them in, and they became just as raving excited about it as their friend was. You can really see how that friend asking a friend ripples out and builds that. Otis, anything you'd say?
No, no, absolutely spot on. That's that first part of that line, people like us. People like us do things like this. And if you're building that, that's one of the great things about people bringing their friends in and so forth and their family, they're bringing in people who are like them in some way.
I mean, it's your classic team captain. You're already doing some of this work. It's how do you
Right.
tie that team captain's energy to letting them get more engaged and share with each other and talk to each other, not us just talk at them. And Dave in Calgary has another great comment. Any examples of a tribe being broken up? Example, a church that splits apart. Example, being required to wear masks in church versus the right not to wear one. P.S. This is a real example, by the way, he wrote. So, Otis, any thoughts on that?
No, tribes come and go. Tribes are dynamic, and people seek out tribes, and they're sometimes more meaningful than others in their lives. And so you've got to kind of expect that. I think that I think I know what your comment is, so I'm going to hold my thought for your comment, DJ. Go ahead.
Oh, please keep going.
Oh no, just it's funny because we have an example of a church splitting up in exactly that same way, and it's because people start to think maybe these people aren't like us. And so they exit. That actually doesn't happen all that often, though. But yeah, people come in and out of tribes all the time. And that's another reason why it's so important to have Seth Godin talks about your super fans. Your super fans are the ones that are going to bring in 4 people because they're like them too. And so they want to grow the tribe. And so that's a real component of tribe building.
Yeah, and I think the lesson, Dave, that you're saying is that tribe building takes effort, it takes resources. The question that was asked earlier about how do you get there to support a community like that, it has to be part of your strategy, invested in, nurtured, and thought through. And then the lens becomes, does this action help us grow a tribe in an authentic, meaningful way of them talking to each other and us talking with them, not at them? And if the answer is yes, then it moves forward. My bet is, those values were broken and therefore the tribe split up. And I think you'll see that with groups that don't work hard to nurture and think strategically about that. And we have one question that just popped in. How do you see tribe building in your approach helping in a DEI effort? I don't want to just check the box. I want it to be meaningful. Oh boy, we could talk for another hour on this topic. Otis, any thoughts?
You're the attorney, DJ. So I'll let you go on. I'll let you go on that.
Yeah, it's probably one of the biggest challenges. I see nonprofit after nonprofit say we want to increase our diversity. We look around and we see people who are just like us. It's not diverse. And it's a real problem that we have because, as Otis has pointed out, people look around and they say, do I see people like me? And so you've got to figure out ways to break that ice, which means it has to require effort, it has to require strategy, and it has to require a real focus on being authentic in the relationship. And to your point, not just checking the box, it's building outreach strategies that emanate from the community to the community and from the tribe to the tribe. It's aligning up the messaging so it reflects the culture, not just the words. It comes to mind right now, the Shriners group. They've had an incredibly successful effort diversifying their revenue by getting really honest about the needs of the specific Latina and Latinx community and working with them to say, okay, we are going to not only authentically engage them, but we're going to create the services and the whole portfolio with our mission that reflects the needs of these specific communities. It's being real honest about doing all of the work necessary to do DE&I, not just it's on our strategic plan, so we want to do it.
Yeah, let me just add. I was on one of the mistakes I've made in my life was to send my children to private school. I regret it. I'm embarrassed to say it now, but they asked me to serve on, because I'd gone to public schools. The school asked me to serve on their diversity committee. After the first meeting, I think that they were sorry they had made that choice and asking me to be on the diversity committee. Because I said, you have to go out and recruit. It's not enough just to hold 4% scholarships, whatever it is. You have to go into the community and recruit. And so, I think in terms of D&I efforts, you've got to go out and as DJ said, you've got to be very active and you've got to recruit, period. Oh, you're muted.
And it is not a Zoom meeting without it happening. We almost made it the full hour without that comment. So we are really grateful everyone joined. We are happy to continue answering questions if you'd like to throw those in the chat, but we're going to have to wrap up our time together. And we're happy to reach out. Feel comfortable reaching out to Otis or myself with additional questions and we'll get you answers. But we just really want to say thank you all for making time today to come together for a topic that we think is not only crucial to the future of nonprofits, but those that are able to really build authentic tribes are going to be in a very different position than those who can't down the road. And that position is going to be success. And so thank you all for being on today. Otis, anything you'd add to close us out?
No, this is not an easy lift, but it's one that is tremendously rewarding. We believe in that. And every year or two we get together and we talk about what are we going to really promote? What's the idea we're going to promote for the next X months? And this is it because we feel that it's so important.
Thank you all again.